Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ episode 99 and a half. And in this episode, we're asking the question, does the Leatherman Free T4 have what it takes to replace my EDC Swiss Army knife of choice, the EvoGrip S18? Let's find out. So thanks for joining us for this special bonus episode of our Knife AQ series as we kind of gear up towards what we hope is going to be a special episode 100. Remember, if you're new to this series, leave your questions down in the comments section below the video and it'll have a chance to get featured in a future episode. But this one right here is, I didn't even pull a direct example because tons of people have asked this over the last couple of years since we launched this series. And it is essentially a request to show what I'm carrying at the end of these videos, at least a periodic update. What's your EDC today? And I've gotten into this before. There's a reason we don't really get into that because one, it would either be repetitive or it would be like we're putting on a performance. You know, hey, look what I got today, trying to impress somebody. And honesty is important, and that doesn't really feel honest to us.
And really, who are we going to impress?
True. But the one constant, whatever the primary EDC folder that I'm carrying of the day happens to be, the one constant of my EDC that I can talk about and have talked about a little bit is the Swiss Army knife that lives on a horizontal pouch on my belt. And it's been essentially the same for about 14 years at this point. I bought myself a Wenger EvoGrip 16 back in 2008. After it went walkabout on me, went missing for a while, I replaced that with an EvoGrip S16, same tool except with the locking blade. And then eventually when Victorinox finished fully integrating the Wenger models that they were going to keep in the lineup and brought them under the Victorinox banner, I bought an EvoGrip S18 for reasons that I'll get into in a little bit. And yes, technically they're not all the same tool, but in my mind and to my experience, they're essentially an evolution of the same thing I've been carrying for 14 years. It's all continuum. It's all kind of the same thing for me. Now, I'm still super happy with my Swiss Army knife, but I had this free T4 from Leatherman out for another project, and it got me thinking, you know what? Maybe it's time to just try to mix things up for a little bit, see what else is out there, and the T4 could be a good option. Price-wise, these tools are essentially the same. They're just under $70 and within $1 of each other on our site right now. And they've both got a set of tools that would satisfy my everyday carry needs. They're not identical though. So let's get into the tools here. Let me take you through my Swiss Army knife first. This is my Swiss Army knife. It comes with your standard pen blade with Victorinox's entry-level steel and a locking mechanism here at the front. It's a little awkward to use if you've never used it before, but I've never cut myself with it over time, and it's nice to have a locking blade. We've also got the common combo of a can opener. I always do that, sorry. A bottle opener on one side that integrates a wire stripper and a flathead / pry bar tip, and a can opener that also integrates a small driver at the end there. It can do small flatheads and small Phillips as well. On the front side also, we have got a nail file and a nice pair of scissors. Now in this tandem of tools right here, of course the scissors is useful for a great number of things, but I was really drawn to the EvoGrip 16 originally because it had both of these, which is a great combo for personal grooming. Errant whiskers with the scissors, that sort of thing, and nail upkeep, of course. And then when you throw in the tweezers that these come with, you've got even more grooming options right there. Back side of the tool, rather than a corkscrew, we have a Phillips screwdriver, which I find much more useful for my everyday carry. And we have an awl, which I don't know that I've actually ever really used this for my EDC types of needs, but it's nice to have. And then the reason I upgraded from my S16 is twofold. You have the wood saw right there, and if you compare the toothpick slots to the old Wenger models, it's a different sized slot. The Victorinox model uses the same sized toothpick and tweezers as the rest of the Victorinox lineup, and that allowed me to replace the toothpick with a small Firefly fire starter right there. A really cool aftermarket part. Now, do the saw and fire starter play into my everyday carry? Not at all, I would say. I liked the idea of it because it made this multi-tool right here a bit more of a compelling option as an everyday on-body survival kit type of thing. But again, not something I really actually use day to day. And probably the only reason I haven't gone back to my S16 comes down to the can openers right here. If we're talking strictly can opening capability, I do actually prefer the Wenger can opener. I think it's more effective and I can do it faster and more easily than I can with the Victorinox design that is on the S18. And they don't make the S16 anymore under the Victorinox lineup, so it's not like I could replace this with the Victorinox version now. But a can opener is not something I need day to day either. So I stick with the Victorinox version here because you've got that extra screwdriver capability. So that's the tool in a nutshell. Very useful for me. What does the Leatherman have to offer? This tool is made in the USA, and the main implement we have, of course, is the knife blade right there. It's 420HC steel with a hollow grind. We've also got on the front, I'll just pull them both out together, we have a file, double-sided in fact, as well as a pry tool slash flathead slash scraper. There's actually a little sharpened edge on the edge of this implement as well. Before I flip it over to the back, we also have a set of tweezers as well. A little less robust, I'd say, than the Victorinox, but we'll get back to that later. On the back side, you can see we have a pocket clip, which is something the Victorinox doesn't have, and 3 more tools. A nice heavy set of scissors, and all with a tip that should be able to be used for some small screw driving, and a Phillips screwdriver with a bottle opener built in there as well. Very nice set of tools overall. Now let's get into the advantages, at least for my needs, that I see in this tool over the Swiss Army knife I've carried for 14 years. And we'll kind of go through piece by piece. First and foremost, you definitely make the argument that the 420HC steel here is an upgrade over the simple and softer stainless that Victorinox uses. But for me, that's not a huge swaying factor, I will say that, because again, this is the complement to my primary folder. So both of these are entry-level steels, both of them are just fine by me. What is an advantage though is you've got one-hand opening on the blade. So it makes it much easier to pull that open with only one hand and get your blade out. I will say, due to the shape and the weight of the tool, it is a little bit awkward to do, and I may in fact wind up opening it two-handed more often than not, but I like having the option. Now, the next advantage, which you could call a subset of the one-hand opening knife blade, all of the implements here are openable with one hand, with the exception of the tweezers. These are designed so that with a push of your thumb at the top here near the pivot, it pops the tools out just enough that you can then get to the one you want. And that works on both sides of the knife very nicely. The next advantage is not only does the blade lock, like on the Victorinox, all of the implements, with the exception of the tweezers, lock open as well. That is a huge advantage right there, especially if you're doing any kind of screw driving as well. Much less likely for it to come loose or for the implement to fold closed when you want to be working hard. And subset of that advantage is the style of lock here. It is a finger-safe style of lock. Whereas with the Victorinox, you've got to put your finger right in the path of the blade to disengage that knife blade. On the Leatherman, with any of the implements, but especially important on the knife blade itself, you can keep your fingers completely free of that cutting path. Definitely a nice passive safety measure I always appreciate in my tools. The next advantage is the pocket clip right here, which is going to make it easier to carry in the pocket. For me, it's a bit of a moot point on that particular advantage of the clip since I'm carrying it in that belt pouch anyway, and will continue to do so with this tool. but it does help with the one-hand opening a little bit. Makes it easier to anchor your fingers. The next advantage on the file, this is going to be useful for more than just fingernails. Whereas the file on the Victorinox, that's a fingernail only affair essentially. But the Leatherman's file is double-sided. You've got two different patterns of cutting teeth. So you can use this not just as a grooming item, but for any kind of crafty or projecty thing that you might need a file for. And the last advantage I will talk about is on the file and on the awl specifically. The tips of these tools, which can be used for screw driving, are a little bit crisper than the tools you see on the Victorinox. Let me open one of those as an example. You can see there the edges are a little more polished, a little more rounded off on the Victorinox. And the crisper edges on these Leatherman implements should be able to get you a little bit more positive engagement. I will say the other two screw driving implements, the larger pry tool and the Phillips screwdriver on the back, aren't as crisp. They are a little bit rounded off, just like you would see on the Victorinox. All right, so what about the disadvantages of the Leatherman Free T4 for my needs? Well, what the blade giveth, it also taketh away. You have a thicker blade geometry here on the Leatherman than you do on the Swiss Army knife. And for some people, that may actually be preferable. You might like the extra kind of strength behind the blade there. But for me, again, this tool acts as a complement to my larger knife. I've already got something that can handle bigger, tougher work. I'm usually reaching for my Swiss Army knife blade when I'm trying to do something a little more delicate, a little more precise. And the blade stock on the Leatherman is going to work against me a little bit compared to the Swiss Army knife. It's not exactly like a pocket chunky tank type of a blade, but compared to the supreme thin sliciness of the Swiss Army knife, it's definitely a difference. So that theme of a little extra thickness actually carries through the rest of the tool as well. It's definitely a little bit more bulky than my Swiss Army knife. This is not going to make a difference in how I carry the knife. Again, this is living on a belt pouch for me anyway. But when I'm needing to use it for those more delicate, more intricate tasks, the little bit of extra weight and extra bulk on the Leatherman is going to work against those tasks a little bit. Certainly not unmanageable, but A to B, again, the Victorinox is definitely going to pull ahead for that reason. Next up, and I know this is a pet peeve of some folks when I bring this topic up, but let's say you need to cut something in a setting where you kind of want to fly under the radar or not raise any eyebrows so much. For that as well, I think the Swiss Army knife still is the king. Nobody bats an eye at a Swiss Army knife pretty much. And while the Leatherman Free T4 is hardly a big aggressive tactical knife, it's definitely a more utilitarian kind of rough and tumble looking tool that is a little bit different and might, quote unquote, raise an eyebrow here and there. Take that with a grain of salt. Your mileage may, of course, vary. But the last disadvantage of the Leatherman over the Swiss Army knife comes down to the warranty. There is nothing at all wrong with the Leatherman's 25-year warranty on their tools. However, the Victorinox does enter the fray with a lifetime warranty. Both very good warranties for a tool that's going to be potentially used hard, but you got to give credit where credit is due. So the question for me is, can the advantages we talked about earlier outweigh the disadvantages of this tool? And because I figured it was just time to mix things up, I'm going to try and find out. I'm going to spend at least the next 2 months carrying this without trying not to even pick up my Swiss Army knife. I want to let this become my go-to tool for that sort of thing. I may even start trying to use it for more cutting tasks where I might typically reach for my primary folder to give it, a even fairer shake in that time. But you folks, let me know what you think of these two tools. Obviously, everybody's everyday carry needs are different. This particular matchup might not meet your needs, but they're going to handle mine, I think, pretty nicely. Let me know which one you think is better, let me know if you think I'm going to be carrying this Leatherman after 2 months, or if I'm going to go back to my Victorinox. I don't even know, but that's the fun of this whole thing. And knife people, when it's time to just mix things up and try something new, you got to follow the muse where it goes. Thanks for sticking around for this bonus episode of our Knife AQ series. Episode 100 is coming right around the corner. Leave your questions in the comments section below for a future episode or for potential inclusion in a future episode. And to get your hands on either an S18 or a free T4, we're going to leave links in the description where you can check them out at KnifeCenter.com. And don't forget about our Knife Rewards program as well, because if you're going to be spending your money on one of these nice multi-tools, you could at least be earning some free money to spend on your next purchase. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. See you next time.